I'll start. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Good evening. It is 5:30 PM on Tuesday, March 18th, 2025, and this regular meeting of the Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission is now called to order in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I am Commission Chairman Mose Dunkel presiding. Also present are Vice Chair Wayne Benner and Commissioners Grant Simmons. Is Scott with us?
He is supposed to be joining via Zoom.
Okay, Reed Weber and Will Mitchell. Grant Simmons, did I say?
You did.
I did, all right.
Thank you.
Ivan Reimar is absent this evening. And when I get confirmation of Scott, I'll let you know. If everyone will please stand, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
An amendment to this evening's agenda was proposed and amended. Was a proposed and amended agenda was, well, maybe I'm reading this wrong. We have an amendment that we did post earlier today, adding a consent calendar, moving the item that was previously under old business regarding the Ridley Village Court Planned Unit Development Preliminary Development Plan to the consent calendar, and reverting this item to an action item for the commission's review and approval of the written decision as prepared by city staff. Because this amendment was made less than 48 hours prior to this meeting, pursuant to Idaho Code Section 74-204, Part 4B, before the amended agenda can become effective, the commission will need to vote to accept the amendment. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
I would need a motion.
I so moved.
Okay.
Oh, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Commissioner Dunkel,
Yes.
Commissioner Torpy,
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons.
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
and Commissioner Benner.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Reed.
Um,
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
okay, and a note also that Scott Torpy is in attendance on Zoom. Okay, moving on. Now proceeding with the consent calendar, commissioners, are there any questions or any items you wish to remove from the consent calendar? I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar. Sorry, I'm a little bit confused.
It's okay. We need a first and a second, then we can do a roll call vote.
Okay.
I so moved to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Commissioner Benner,
Aye.
Commissioner Torpy,
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons.
Yes.
Commissioner Dunkel,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Stain.
and Commissioner Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, motion passes.
Okay, matters from public record. Next, we'll proceed with matters from the public. If you would like to speak on a topic pertinent to this business meeting that is not included on the agenda, now is your opportunity to do so. If you wish to speak and have not yet completed a sign-up form, please do so and hand it to staff. The forms are located on the table as you enter. If you're attending remotely and wish to speak on a matter that is not on the agenda, please raise your hand on Zoom at this time. I would like to make everybody aware that the city does have a policy of public meeting decorum. The rules are posted on the wall just as you enter the chambers. In summary, I would ask that everyone please pleasant and respectful. Do not make derogatory statements about others, including city staff, not to be disorderly or disruptive, no calling out, clapping, or holding up signs, etc. Please note that the commission cannot take testimony on any specific planning or land use related matter or application outside of a official public hearing. As there are public hearings on the agenda this evening, please hold testimony on those matters until after the hearing is open. This time is for general comments on topics not included on the agenda and for comments only. No questions or debate. You may contact the mayor or staff during regular business hours if you have any questions or concerns. When it is your turn to speak, please state your name and whether you reside in Sandpoint city limits. Each speaker will have up to 4 minutes. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak during this general public comment time?
No, Mr. Chair.
Anybody on Zoom?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that makes it pretty quick. We're moving on. Next, we have a public hearing and a recommendation decision on the proposed update to Sandpoint's area of impact boundary adjustment. If you wish to testify, please complete a sign-up form and hand it to staff. We will begin with a staff presentation followed by commissioner questions. Then we'll open up the hearing for public testimony. After the public hearing has been closed, we will proceed with commission deliberation and a recommendation decision. I will now yield the floor to Community Planning and Development Director, Jason Welker.
Thank you, Chair Dunkel. I'm going to share my screen with you all, and we will get into a brief presentation. There was a staff report included in your packet for tonight's meeting. I assume all of you had time to read that, and hopefully many members of the public here had a chance to read that staff report as well. I also want to thank the great turnout for tonight's meeting. A little bit unexpected for what really is just a kind of a boring bureaucratic step in a process that ultimately will end up at the county commissioners sometime this summer for a final decision. I want to make it clear that Idaho state law requires that cities update their existing areas of city impact for the updated version of this law, which was signed into law last July, which required that our areas of city impact across the entire state of Idaho be modified to bring those boundaries within 2 miles of city limits. So there are some new guidelines. The additional changes to the law are really around jurisdiction. I'm not going to read through the law. It's linked from the staff report tonight. But Idaho state law does expect cities to establish and bring to their county commissions areas of impact, which are really defined quite simply here. And I'll just show this definition. And this is probably what brought a lot of people out tonight, because this language can appear to be somewhat intimidating and then lead, I think, residents to believe that there's some sort of imminent action that's going to be taken. But an area of impact should be established, modified, or confirmed based on the ability and likelihood of a city or cities to annex lands within that area of impact in the near future. We've gone back and forth at the staff level here and with our legal team to really understand what that means, ability and likelihood, because those are two very different words, right? Ability and one implies intent, right? Likelihood, in my opinion, implies that there's an intent to annex land. Ability is different. And really any effort to annex is very unusual for that to be initiated by a city in the state of Idaho. It's almost always initiated by residents of an area that wish to be brought into a city. And I can just say that from the city staff's perspective and from what I would assume is city council's perspective, there's really no intent or likelihood of annexation beyond our existing city limits in the near future. So that also raises the question, what's the purpose of an area of city impact, which I'm going to henceforth refer to as an area of impact, because as of last July, the state of Idaho literally took cities out of the area of city impact and changed the name to AI. So it's now just called an area of impact. In the updated legislation, which is here, and again, we're not going to scroll through it to see all the changes, but there's really very little jurisdictional authority of a city within an area of city impact or an area of impact. In fact, there's no jurisdiction for cities within the areas of impact. This is a pure planning exercise. It's about envisioning potential future expansion or growth. The areas within area of impact are completely governed and under the jurisdiction of the county, Bonner County in this case. The city of Sandpoint has no jurisdiction in its area of impact. Really, the only thing that would continue to occur within our modified area of impact is the county would notify the city planning department when development applications come to the county planning department. And that's purely the same thing we do with the county, the same thing we do with the Idaho Transportation Department, with the Independent Highway District, with the Department of Environmental Quality. We notice all the state and local agencies of new development within Sandpoint. Bonner County doesn't notice the city of Sandpoint for developments going on out near Old Town or Clark Fork, but they do notice our planning department and give us the opportunity to just comment on development happening in our area of impact. That's really it. We don't have any authority. We can't regulate what goes on in the area of impact. It's really just about what is, possible, I should say, going back to the language, what would we be able to annex and possibly likely to annex within the near future? Okay, so that's the language we're given to work with. And I'll just transition now to a couple images for you. So first one is our existing area of city impact. This was established, not even sure when, we think in the 1990s, most likely. The entire colored area outside of city limits there. So the blue, the green, and the purple, and everything else is city of Sandpoint. So everything you see here is city of Sandpoint, but the area of city impact extends far beyond the 2-mile limit imposed by the state in last year's update to this legislation. So we've got some, very rural areas that are not only unlikely, but not even able to ever be served by city utilities. So this is clearly like, okay, how was this established 20, 30 years ago? We don't really know, but it's very large. And in fact, all of there's a little bit of confusion. Commissioner Torpy actually emailed us late today and brought to our attention a possible discrepancy in the staff report, which I do want to explain. I think there was a line in the staff report that said all of the areas for the proposed modification to our area of impact are currently in our area of city impact. Okay, the one area that there's some confusion over, and even our fellow planning staff member from the county who's here tonight, Alex, was not entirely sure. You can see this little area down here next to the slough, and I'll zoom in for you. By the way, the hashed line on this map from our comprehensive plan, our 2024 comprehensive plan, is the proposed reduction in our area of impact. But you can see that the hash line surrounds this area down by the slough here. This is called the McFarland property. And it's not shown as being included in our current area of city impact. But keep in mind, the area of city impact is a county jurisdiction, right? So when we look at the county's GIS map, it does actually show that as being part of our area of city impact. I'm going to go back and forth here because this was our area of city impact. We're talking about modifying it and creating a new smaller area of impact, which is the new language. So that the county does recognize that little slough area as part of the city's area of city impact. Also included are some of these weird areas here south of Pine Street. You can see that the green here kind of goes south of Pine Street. We are proposing in the modified area of impact, basically ceding that to the city of Dover. It's surrounded by the city of Dover. We have had meetings with the planning staff at Dover and Kootenai and Ponderay to look for potential overlaps. And this was one where they propose including this in their proposed area of impact that they wish to bring to the Bonner County Commissioners. And they also included, and you saw in the staff report, this little area down here, they are proposing, the city of Dover is proposing including that in their area of impact. So this is a place that state law establishes how disputes over or overlapping areas of impact are resolved, and it basically is up to the county commissioners. This is not something where their city council and our city council are going to Rochambeau for it. We will both present our proposed area of impact modifications to the county commissioners and let them decide. So it's really not something we're stressed about. It's something the county commissioners will have ultimate decision over. Just for context, Dover's justification is that they have like an 8-inch sewer pipe going across the bridge on Ontario Street. And they believe that means that they can serve sewer to this area. Therefore, it should be in their area of impact. We countered with the fact that obviously there's sewer and water infrastructure running up to the city property line here. So we have, sewer mains and water mains going up the entire eastern portion of this little area along the slough. But again, going back to what does this really matter? If the property owner does not wish to be annexed, neither city is going to end up within their city boundaries. This would be, the 10 to 20 year horizon. If whoever owns this property in 15 or 20 years desires to do development there, annexation might be the first step towards development. Because without infrastructure, they can't develop this property. It's not very valuable until there's infrastructure there. So before we serve infrastructure, the city would annex that. But again, it would be at the invitation of the property owner. It's not like the city's chomping at the bit to put housing there or anything. And the same is true for everything else in this proposed boundary. So zooming back out, we can see the existing area of city impact is vast, goes really far north up along Bronx, almost to Selly Road. It goes way up into the foothills of the Selkirk Mountains. It goes way west on Gooby and Baldy Mountain Road, well beyond any ability for the city to serve utilities at any time in the future. So that the hash line here was just kind of an estimate of where we might reduce our area of impact when the time came, and the time has come. And that's what we're doing here today, is proposing this modification to our AI to bring it into compliance with the new state law, which limits the boundary to no more than 2 miles, and to basically achieve something a little bit more realistic to what could be served by utilities in the near future. So I want to just explain here, and I put this up on a GIS software here showing basically the big picture of what the proposed modification to our area of impact includes. You can see it's dramatically smaller. It's about 75% smaller than our existing area of city impact, which is 12.3 square miles. The proposed modified area of impact is just over 3 square miles. So we're talking about reducing our area of impact by around 10 square miles. And that is what it looks like from above. Just to explain, why do we have all these jagged lines? Why not just draw a straight, line upland or something? The idea here was to include parcels so that we don't divide parcels in and out of our area of impact. So you can see we kind of followed the principle was we'll go out Pine Street, we'll leave the area that's surrounded by Dover to Dover's area of impact, and then we'll work our way up upland and include parcels along upland on both sides of the road. So you can see that's why we've got these kind of weird lines here. If you're not adjacent to upland, you're not included in the proposed AI. Out to Baldy, continue upland up to Gooby. And keep in mind, everything west of upland was included in our area, our current area of city impact, but we've shrunk that, bringing in properties just along Gooby Road down to Mountain View, properties along Mountain View Road up to, I believe this is called, I forget the name of this, Leisure Lane. Yes, I knew it was something relaxing. We've got these sort of suburban style development along Leisure Lane, and then out to the existing Goodman, which is in city limits. So you can see this is all within city limits here. We've got some property within city limits west of the railroad tracks here. Working our way north, we've got the developments along Woodland. And something to keep in mind is that these properties on the east side of Woodland Drive up here on our way up to Schweitzer Mountain Road are already served by city water. This is a part of Bonner County that is within the Edelweiss Water District. So they're getting their drinking water from the city of Sandpoint. Same with large parts of the area along Pine Street and all the way up to Great Northern, or sorry, not Great Northern, but Baldy Mountain Road. That's the Syringa Heights Water District. That's city of Sandpoint water as well. So one of the principles here was we should include properties that are already being served by city of Sandpoint utilities. Because if there's going to be annexation in the future, it might be, extending a sewer line to where we already have water lines going. And then you've got basically the ingredients for full annexation. Going here, keep in mind the current area of city impact goes really far north up towards Selly Road up here, but we're proposing reducing that to basically the extent of Bronx Road and then back down to city limits by the fairgrounds. So that's the proposal, just putting, that big picture out. We've got over 12 square miles in our current area of city impact, and we're proposing reducing that to just over 3 square miles in the new area of impact. Again, the principle here was to basically just bring it into compliance with the state law. The 2 mile limit The definition of the area of impact of state law, which is that this is land that is able to be annexed in the future. We realized that vast swaths of our area of city impact was not realistically able to be annexed. So this is an exercise, first step in 3. The next step would be to bring a proposal to city council, who then makes a recommendation to the Bonner County commissioners, who ultimately have say, because this is, again, their jurisdiction. Nothing would change for people living in this area. There's no imminent annexation. It's just the ability to possibly someday grow into this area. And really, that's almost always citizen initiated. That would be at the request of residents of these neighborhoods, of these parts of rural Bonner County. The city of Sandpoint has no intent to grow or annex these properties. It's just if any of these property owners in the future desired to have city services, this is the framework by which that process would take place. The city would be able to annex, and the county commissioners wouldn't be able to block that if it were desired by the residents. So, Bill, do you have anything to add? Bill's our city planner for members of the public here. Happy to take any questions.
Do commissioners have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So, in reading through the state language, why did the state change? Because I remember when we went through the comp plan, we spent an inordinate amount of time talking about impact and being really thoughtful about it. And what happened?
My hunch is that they literally were looking for ways to reduce the authority and jurisdictional authority of cities.
All right.
So taking the city out of the city of impact, literally, they took the name city out of area of city impact. And they also took any opportunity for city to have any influence on the development that goes on in their areas of city impact away as well. So that there was talk a few years ago, Grant, I think you might have been part of the conversation of in our negotiations with the county about the revised area of city impact. Again, I'm going to use city impact again because this was before the legislation last year. There was some discussion of the possibility that perhaps new development within the area of city impact would be overseen by the city's planning department, not the county's planning department. Any hope of that, not that hope might not be the right word, because I don't know why that was really something that was being discussed. Previous administrations perhaps wanted to see the city's authority extend out into the county, but that possibility is no longer at the table. And it's very clear in the state law that the city has no jurisdiction in its area of impact.
And then
So again, back to your question,
yeah.
why did they do it? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
Fonda's on, she's our legal counsel. We might
We
have
can speculate, but
chime in. Fonda, do
okay.
you have any hunches about why the cities were taken out of the area of city impact?
Yeah, I think that this legislation, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I think this legislation was actually driven by the Association of Idaho Counties for exactly the same reason that you just expressed, Jason. There were a number of disputes that were ending up being decided by the courts related to design and build out and planning activities in these areas of city impact. And so the attempt was to create legislation that made it a little more clear and also reduced the city's ability to, if you will, overreach. So there were a lot of cities who had very expansive areas of city impact, and the legislation was designed to force the cities to really look at that and make a decision on keeping it, well, not make a decision, force cities to make have an area of impact that was more manageable, that you were likely or could grow into within the next 5 years and didn't extend beyond that 2-mile limit from your exterior boundary. So it was really intended to force the cities to eliminate these overlapping areas of impact and have the county maintain authority and jurisdiction over the planning and development outside of the city jurisdictional boundaries.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. So if I understand the process, tonight we're going through what brings us into compliance, to which we'll make a recommendation, which city council will do something with, and assuming it meets muster there, then it's ultimately to the county to decide.
Correct. And I would point out that the other cities in Bonner County are all being required to do this right now as well.
Gotcha.
So the
Okay.
city of Dover has had planning and zoning meetings about their area of impact. The cities of Ponderay and Kootenai, Priest River, Clark Fork, they're all doing this right now.
Gotcha.
So this is happening all over Bonner County. And Alex is here. Actually, Fonda knows. Fonda, what is the deadline that the state has established by which these areas of impact must be renegotiated with the counties?
So the final decision is to be made by the county by December 31st of 2025. So when this legislation came out in July of 2024, we started at that point mapping out this time frame of, okay, we need to have it in front of planning and zoning in the spring of 2025. But the ultimate final decision needs to be by December 31 of 2025. So in order to keep on track with the number of public hearings and decision-making bodies that are involved, you know, we're on schedule now by having it in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission at this time.
Gotcha.
Cool. I'm good. Anyone else?
Yeah, I
Commissioner
think Scott
Torpe.
Thorpe.
Commissioner
Oh, good
Torpe?
evening. Hi, Jason, I have a question about what I read to be other criteria in the state statute. And I was wondering how important this criteria is, and understanding that, as you said, this is an exercise more than anything else. But you mentioned the criteria being within 2 miles of the existing city boundary. Another criteria that I read speaks to areas where municipal sewer and water are expected to be provided within 5 years. And listening to your presentation and kind of understanding the scope of the cost and other things, which I know would be borne by others, not the city, I assume. But are we, do we genuinely have a sense that this 3+ square mile area is expected to be provided with water and sewer, city water and sewer in the next 5 years? And is this something that the county commissioners would ask us when we present this to them? And if so, what answer would we have for them?
Yeah, it's a good question. Almost half of our proposed area of impact is already served by city water, first of all. So we've got the Syringa Heights Water District, the Edelweiss Water District. Sewer's a different story. Sewers, there are 2 places where sewer is currently served west of the railroad tracks, and that's the Lula Court, which is just west of Traverse Park on Pine Street, and then the Goodman subdivision west of Woodland in North Sandpoint. So again, this is, if you're asking me, do I expect the city to start serving? No, absolutely not. In 5 years, we're not going to have a wastewater plant built that can serve any new development, right? We currently can't serve new development with our wastewater plant. You know, everybody here knows that that's the biggest infrastructure challenge that we face. So no, I would not expect that we'll be serving sewer in any new areas. Our water plant, possibly. I mean, the Syringa Water District might want to expand. Edelweiss might want to expand. So the word "and," again, the language matters, and the word "and" here makes it hard to say yes. It's likely that we would be serving water and sewer, but we are already serving water to large amounts of this area.
Okay, and I that brings up another question I have based on what I heard you say, and that is that we, the city, supplies wholesale water to these other entities that own their own infrastructure. That it's not the city's infrastructure.
Right. Yeah.
And I have to assume that maybe I should, that the city had no say in the sizing of that infrastructure or its materials or how it's been maintained. Is that correct?
As far as I understand, that, you know, they're their own utility districts, so they maintain.
I would assume that would be the case.
Yeah.
So I don't know how old that infrastructure is, but the idea that when we annex, the city annexes those areas that are now supplied by the city, but are served by infrastructure owned and maintained by others, that the city would actually find that infrastructure to be adequate. That it may require, in some instances, to replace some or much of it. You know, unless you know otherwise, it would be, it might be a financial hazard to assume ownership of those facilities without, I guess, a lot of due diligence.
So I want to be really careful in the language that we use, Commissioner, just because the commentary was the city moving forward with a proposed annexation. So I think you heard Jason say a number of times, the city's not anticipating any, what we would call in my world, a forced annexations. That's not the case. If there was a situation where property owners or a group of property owners in another water district came forward and asked to de-annex from their existing district and annex into the city of Sandpoint, you are correct. There would be an evaluation of that infrastructure at that time, and most likely some conditions and requirements that they improve that infrastructure before we would accept it. So your point is well taken. We just want to be careful that we're not implying that somehow the city's intending to force some annexations, because that's not what this is
Oh,
about.
no, not at all. No,
Okay.
nope. Okay. And I just want to be sure that none of this implies a duty to serve. In other words, if I owned, and maybe this is a question for you, Wanda, if I owned some land out in this area of impact, and I read that it's where the city expects to have water and sewer, I bought that land and I wanted to annex. I own that land, and I come forward and I say I'd like to be part of the city of Sandpoint, and I'd like the city of Sandpoint to serve, with all my municipal needs for this development. Is there any potential cost that the city has? Is there an implied duty to serve? Does the city have to say yes, for example? Like, yes, we agree, we will annex you.
So first of all, I want to be clear that Idaho Code 50-222 governs annexations, not the code section that we're looking at now. And one of the requirements in 50-222 is that a property cannot be annexed unless it's contiguous to the city boundaries. So I don't want anybody thinking that's just kind of out in this area of impact that's not contiguous to the city boundaries, that they could have this expectation of service. Second to that, a parcel owner contiguous to the city boundaries of the city of Sandpoint that wishes to be annexed would file an application for annexation that would come before you and before city council for a final decision. And it has standards of approval similar to other applications that you see, where all of these issues of services would be addressed, and the applicant would have to address any substandard infrastructure. That would all be evaluated at that time. So it's not automatic anyways. And no, we are not creating some entitlement by having a property in an area of impact.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Weber.
I have a question, maybe it's for Fonda as well, on the Title 50 for annexation. Are there any other avenues for a city to actually annex aside from, like, is there like a potential for multiple properties to be annexed? If there's any sort of area in the code which would allow annexation of a larger piece of larger land outside of this?
A city could choose to initiate an annexation of multiple parcels, a broad swath of land, if you will, contiguous to the city boundaries. Idaho Code 50-222 does allow for that. What we're talking about, though, is there's not been any discussions at the city of Sandpoint about any forced annexations, but it is allowed in Idaho Code for that to happen. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Simmons.
Yeah, one more question. So the other thing I had read in the language is that this gets reviewed at least every 5 years. Is that right?
Under the
Yeah.
new law.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. That was it.
That is correct. And that might actually, 5 years from now, we may actually be answering Commissioner Torpy's original question about, is the county going to come back to us and say, well, do you really intend to serve out there? Or do you have the ability to serve out there? And likely what's going to happen is that's not going to occur at this round, but there's going to be serious evaluation over the next 5 years of what transpires. And probably in the 5-year review of this, there might be some more critical questioning.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
Jason, just so the public is clear, the rights that the city has for forced annexation in your original map in the blue area exists right now. And with the reduction of the area of impact, those rights will be diminished. The extent of those rights will be diminished, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Also, going back to Fonda's point that only lands already adjacent to the city can be annexed. So it's kind of absurd to think that the city would annex something 4 miles up Baldy Mountain Road.
No, I
understand we are dramatically reducing the potential area for annexation
right
through this modification.
And there's no new kind of entitlement for the city to annex. There's no new right.
And quite to the contrary, the new state law, further minimizes the city's jurisdiction and its area of impact. So, yeah. From previous state law.
I just have one question. What was the thought process of the proposed size? Is it just kind of,
So
like you said, the areas that already have water, or?
Probably going back to like 2019 when the comp plan update started taking place. I think back then, I mean, you were on planning and zoning back then. I was on planning and zoning back then. The discussion was around our area of city impact, as it was called then, is far larger than it needs to be. It should be shrunk. So as far as the exercise of fine tuning that hashed line to something more precise, that was basically just, okay, if we follow that hash line and say what was proposed through the comprehensive planning process, what would that look like using a real, GIS map showing property boundaries? So it was really just trying to stay as close to that hash line, the proposed area of city impact, or the proposed area of impact, because that's what we had to work off as a planning team. We're working off of the city's planning documents, which in this case is the 2024 comprehensive plan. And then it was just down to, zooming in on the GIS map and outline the property boundaries along that hash line so that we didn't, bisect any properties. There are actually a couple places where properties are bisected because there are currently properties north of Sandpoint city limits that straddle this the Sand Creek. So Sand Creek is the eastern boundary of our proposed AI, but there are quite a few, not quite a few, maybe 3 or 4 several acre large properties like north of the Vadalwood development that half of the property lies on the east side of Sand Creek and half lies on the west side of Sand Creek. So that's Pondere's area of impact over there. We don't want to get in a fight with Pondere over area of impact. And, following geological or geographical features like a creek just makes sense in this case.
Okay, any more questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to, sorry,
Yeah.
I'd like to add one more thing just for the public to understand also in case they want to go look at this information. At the same time that the area of impact statute was revised in 2024, the annexation statute that I referenced, 50-222, was also given a complete overhaul and really removed a lot of the rights that the cities had previously for forced annexation and put a lot of the power back with the private landowners. And the beginning sentence of this, I just think is important for the public to know. In the legislative intent of this complete overhaul, it says, it is the intent of the legislature to honor the right of private landowners to have a voice in their own governance, to minimize conflict between citizens and municipalities, to provide a mechanism for the orderly development of Idaho cities, including the efficient and economically viable provision of tax-supported and fee-supported municipal services. So the legislation was intended from the beginning to really put more rights back in the private landowners' hands and give them more of a voice when it comes to both area of impact as well as the annexations. So I don't know if that helps, but I just thought I would offer it since one of the commissioners asked about why did this happen? Why was this change made? So the legislature gave us a little piece of their thought process at the beginning of Idaho Code 50-222.
Thank you.
I might also add that, I think we've heard repeatedly from legal and in our own less, educated interpretation of state law, less informed interpretation of state law. Thank you so much, Fonda, for that. Being in an area of impact does not take any rights away from the people within that area of impact, but it does make it easier if sometime in the future those residents desired to have the benefits of being within a city, which in this case really come down to the ability to subdivide. Without municipal services, the ability to subdivide rural lands are extremely constrained. So in Bonner County, minimum lot sizes where sewer and water are not provided is 2.5 acres. Minimum lot size where sewer and water are provided is 10,000 square feet. So basically 10 times the density where urban services are provided. But again, that would be at the request of the property owners. If a property owner wished to, tap into the wealth of their land through the subdivision process, that would require annexation. Because without those urban services, your allowed density is 10% what it is with urban services. But again, just putting that back on the property owner. State law makes that very clear. And the city of Sandpoint has no intent to increase density in rural Bonner County. That would be at the request of property owners. But being part of an area impact would enable property owners to initiate that process with less red tape than if they were not in an area of impact.
Fonda, can I ask one more question? I think a lot of the public is worried about forced annexation from the city. Like, what would that process look like?
So I'm looking at the new ordinance right now, as you can tell, because I read from it. So it would require an identification of an area that the city wished to annex. An annexation plan would be put together. The property owners would be all notified 45 days ahead of the first public hearing. That would go to public hearing at planning and zoning as well as city council, if over objection of the parcel owners. And the whole process is really designed to encourage consent of the parcel owners for annexation. But if there wasn't consent and it were approved by council anyways, then the parcel owners have a right on a city initiated annexation to proceed to court to ask for a petition, to have a petition for judicial review filed in district court to have their rights evaluated by a judge. Did you want more process?
No, that's good.
So it's multi-steps. It's an annexation plan. It's notification to parcel owners. It's multiple public hearings. It's a final decision by council and an opportunity for a landowner to ask the court to review what happened if they don't believe that they've been treated, fairly or correctly.
Fonda, is there a case of that happening in Idaho in the recent history?
Under this new statute, probably not. I can tell you, I've been doing this for 22 years, and the only forced annexation that I've been involved in was I was representing the landowners, and we successfully overturned the annexation. So the city forced an annexation and we overturned it. Second to that, of all the cities I've represented, we've never moved forward with what we call a forced annexation. Now, there are opportunities for cities as people outside of the jurisdictional boundaries want services. They sometimes give implied consent to annexation and don't realize it. So I would also caution the public with that. Or they sign consent forms that say, yes, I want your city water and I consent to be annexed if you ever want to annex me. I don't know of any of those in the city of Sandpoint. I'm just telling you that those are tools that are used.
And a city would want to grow for what reasons?
Well, the whole point is your urban buffer, right? So this area of impact conversation all stems from how are you developing on your urban buffer and your outside fringe area, and how do you make it most cost effective? So a city wanting to grow or wanting to annex would be because they're already providing services and they're not receiving the tax benefit from parcels that they're already providing services to that aren't in their jurisdictional boundary. A landowner wanting to annex would be because they want to develop their property. Or they need city services for some other reason, and so they need to annex in order to get city services.
Or if a city was built out, there's no more available property, huge demand for available space in the area, something like that, maybe.
Sure, look at Kootenai County, the race across the prairie. So a number of those big developments that are annexing in, well, they annexed in several years ago under annexation agreements that said, when we want to annex city, you will take us, and we agree that at that time we'll only develop at 4 units per acre. So there's lots of annexation negotiations that go on between cities and parcel owners, but the underlying sentiment is that the annexation would be by consent.
And I would, encourage anybody interested in what does Sandpoint envision for the next 20 years? We just adopted a comprehensive plan that lays that vision out pretty clearly. And our vision for growth and development in Sandpoint is very clear in the comprehensive plan. It's about infill development. We know growth is coming to North Idaho, but Sandpoint's ability to accommodate that and our focus on accommodating that growth is through infill development, right? Meaning, things like cottage developments, things like ADUs in Sandpoint. We can accommodate the demand for housing in Idaho without ruining the rural character of Bonner County. And our comp plan really paints that vision clearly. We want to protect the rural character of Bonner County by supporting growth and development where infrastructure already exists. It's way cheaper to serve denser development in Sandpoint's traditional neighborhoods than it is to serve quarter acre or half acre or 1 acre lots out in the county. It's not in the city taxpayers or city council's interest to expand out into the county when we've got plenty of opportunity for infill development here in Sandpoint. And that's what our comprehensive plan and our zoning ordinances are really written to encourage, that kind of infill development where there's already infrastructure provided. And I think the county's comprehensive plan probably says something. Well, I shouldn't speak for the county.
Nice plug.
Yeah.
Like that.
I think they're still updating their comp plan.
Likely. Okay, any more comments or questions? All right. We'll move on with the public hearing. Again, if you wish to testify, please complete a sign up form and hand to the staff. Those on Zoom who wish to testify may raise their hand at this time. City policy provides that the presiding officer may allow gifted time during a public hearing, where you may gift your time to someone else. The person gifting may do so only one time. And the person receiving may only receive one gift for a total of up to 6 minutes. If you are gifted time, please state as much. And when you begin speaking, state the name of the person who gifted you their time. Both parties must be present here in chambers. If you're in the room and received gifted time, as instructed earlier, please state the name of the person in the room who gifted you their time. I wish that was more brief. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak, or are there any hands raised on Zoom?
Mr. Chair, we have Frank Cafferty.
Choose not to speak at this point.
Thank you. When you're called to, if you wish to speak, please step forward. And
We have Rich Neber. I apologize if that's the incorrect last name.
Richard Dara, old property on Beauty Road.
can you step up to the dais, please?
Richard Nair, Gooby Road. Thank you for the presentation. It clarified a lot. I was spooked, and probably a lot of the neighbors on Gooby Road that have been there 20 years ago, the city made a forced run at us. And I think we got an attorney and fought it off. And I think the only other question I have, isn't there a lot size limit that you can't forcibly annex, like 15 acres? Waiting for the attorney she left.
So during this time, this is comment, and it's not a back and forth, so we won't answer
Yeah.
any of that, but it can be brought up during our deliberation, and staff could address it after this.
Well, I think the states addressed it in the legislation they did last year. All right, well, thank you. I'm reassured.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, there's nobody else at this time.
I'm shocked. I'd like to hear more from everybody, but I guess. Okay, then nobody on Zoom, and, all right. Had us all worried. Okay, and there's nobody here that has not had a chance to speak. So at this time, the hearing is now closed. Commissioners, you may ask questions of staff at this time, and now we'll open our deliberation.
I have a question.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Is there a lot size limit on annexation?
Speaking to the mic.
Oh, is there a lot size limit on annexation?
I'm looking right now under the new code. He's correct. There was under the old code. And I'm not seeing it under the new code, but if I find it, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Probably not applicable to this hearing, but good to know. Nobody? No. Well, staff, do you have anything to add? I mean,
No,
nothing really changed. Okay. Um. Well, this time I'd entertain a motion to recommend or to not recommend.
Mr. Chair, do we have the language for that?
It's pretty
No,
much just a,
Is it
It-
just
just
straight
a-
up?
Bill, what would you're recommending that we would bring the proposed area of impact boundary to city council,
Okay.
who would then further pass it on to the county commissioners for consideration? Or you could propose an amendment to that boundary if you saw fit, or you could propose to deny the, I'm not sure what that would mean if you denied it. I think we need to change according to state law, we need to reduce our area of impact boundary, so.
and if we denied,
would-
we'd have to have a way to make it better with an
Right.
explanation to.
Or in this case, you would probably, recommend approval as proposed or recommend it to approve it with changes that we could then implement and bring back to you.
Right, recommend that city council submit this to the commission.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
I think we're ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I
Commissioner Simmons.
motion that we approve the recommended changes to the area of impact for review by the city council.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. And a second. This will be a roll call vote.
Commissioner Torpe,
Yes,
Commissioner Simmons.
Yes.
Commissioner Benner,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunkel,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, motion passes.
All right, good job. Okay, at this time, we would go through old business, but we have none.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I do just have one kind of a procedural question for
Yeah.
the staff. If this gets approved through the city council, goes to the county commissioners and then they approve it, does that come back to the city planning commission to change the comp plan to match the new
No, because I don't believe we would need to amend the comp plan because the proposed boundary is already in there. So,
but you have a specific boundary now, whereas in the comp plan, it's just kind of a general boundary. I-
With a dotted line.
Yeah.
Suggested on-
I apologize, Mr. Chair
Yeah.
and Commissioners. If anybody has any conversations going, if we could please take them out into the lobby.
Yeah, you don't have to go home, but we still have business here, so.
from what I
Okay.
understand, the area of impact actually lives with the county. It's like a county
Okay.
thing. So, there was some explanation in the law about how the county would implement the new boundary using their GIS technicians and then put that onto their map. Another thing I wanted to point out that I read in the law is that the noticing for the hearing at the county commissioner level they will send mailers to every resident living within the proposed area of impact boundary. The county planning department, Alex is still here, will take care of that and then invoice us for all the mailing costs for that. So the city of Sandpoint will pay for that, but the final hearing on this will be at the county commissioner level. And then once that is either approved or amended or modified by the county commissioners, it will be basically live with the county. So they'll implement it on their GIS maps. They'll do the final, outline of the boundary themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with no old business on the agenda, we'll move on to our final items. Are there any matters that the staff would like to bring to the attention of the commission at this time? Nope. Okay, now we'll begin our commissioner roundtable period. Do commissioners have any roundtable topics for discussion? Anything on your mind? Any questions for staff that on what's coming up in the future or?
That was gonna be my question.
Yeah, that's kind of, maybe we should rename it that.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
What was that?
just what do you see over the next 90 days of hearings, applications? Anything special that we should look out for?
We were just putting together a 60-day calendar, in the office just yesterday. Looks like we might be getting a rezone application in, filed in the next several days or weeks for property on Boyer. We've got a handful of short plats that we're working on right now. We have a number of pre-application meetings that are for some significant development downtown. I don't want to get too specific because no application's been filed. But there's 3 probably coming in for the possibly 4 applications in the downtown area alone for the next couple days, weeks. Once they're submitted, we'll stand them up on our current project's website. There are ongoing discussions regarding, implementation at University Place. Spent a lot of time on that particular subdivision, trying to figure out what next steps might look like. In addition to the daily building permit load. In addition to that, there's obviously changes to the parking ordinance. We've been asked to take a look at the parking policy that Jason's been working on, but also that we've got to at some point start on the historic preservation component of what council's asked us to do. I'm just trying to find time to get to that on top of all the permits we're working on. But there's also there's a grab bag of things we'd like to bring to the commission just in gearing up for future code updates too, just conversations about things. In fact, I'm probably take this opportunity to ask you if you're comfortable with having some less formal conversations. We can just come together and agendize, discussions for various items without having to have such a formal presentation, just to get in the habit of having conversations about issues that we want to talk about with its code updates and things like that. That would be helpful for staff, but that's not necessarily in the next 90 days, but it's on my mind. It's just a way to, work together and just have a little bit more informality to some of the things we do as we're taking a look at specifically code updates and things like that. That's essentially what's on our plates. It's quite a bit.
Yeah, no, and we're going into the time of year where things will start picking up, I imagine.
Yeah.
Depending. I had a question about, there's a couple projects we've seen in the past, specifically on Boyer, in the area of Super One. And there was some activity, and I know they were pretty close to the deadline for their permit, I believe, and they did a little bit of work, but since then, it seems like it's been pretty dormant.
Yeah, we've been working close at the tribute project.
Yeah, pretty large apartment.
Pretty large
complexes.
apartments. We've been working with them. The last conversations seem to indicate that they might be coming back to either amend or apply for a new conditional use permit. They've reached sort of coming up to the limits on what that use permit, the life of that permit.
Yeah.
So prior to it expiring, they want to communicate with us about what their intentions are and how they might want to move forward, try to give themselves a little bit more time as they arrange whatever it is they're arranging, financing or whatever it is to get the thing off the ground. But we just had those conversations last week, so we're not sure what their next move is going to be. But there's a lot of projects in that stage. To be honest with you, there's a lot of projects in that stage where either they have a permit that they may or may not proceed with, or they intend to come in with an application. A lot of pre-application meetings we've been having, a lot of inquiry about, development in Sandpoint, a lot. So this last week alone, we had 3 significant projects say, hey, look, we want to come in and have a conversation with you about how to develop. So spend a lot of time just organizing, trying to get clear answers to what our code says and, what the process looks like and what options might be.
So that tribute project in particular, their conditional use permit was approved in June of 2022.
22, yeah.
And it has a 3-year lifespan, by which time building permits have to have been pulled. They're not going to get building permits pulled by June this year. So
Likely.
there, okay. Yeah. They've been told that their permit will expire in June this year, and I think they're going to request an extension, which will probably be coming to this body sometime this spring for a requested extension. They're arranging financing right now. It's a lot of it comes down to financing in this market and where they can get their capital from. So,
But we'll let them explain that. We'll let the applicant, if and when they file, explain what their intentions might be. But factually, what we know is that they're talking with us about, what their options might be as it relates to the permit that they have. Yeah.
Oh, I see Fonda again.
Yeah, that's why I had to add that in. Instead of have Fonda just, it's okay, Fonda, we got this.
That was my cautionary face.
They said they're not going to, and Fonda said, wait a minute.
Yeah, factually, lots of inquiry, lots of curiosity, lots of asking questions about development and us explaining what our codes say and what processes might be, right?
Also on Ontario,
Mhm.
the large vacant piece, kind of,
By the church.
yeah, by the
Yeah.
church. We saw that, it's been a little while, but I don't think,
Place.
yeah, but there, yeah, it's the lake, as it should be called right now.
Is that the old lighthouse?
This is the old Northern Lights.
Oh,
Lights Out.
Northern Lights, lights out. Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, so that one and the one across the street,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
So I haven't seen any activity on either,
Ontario.
and,
Right. So again, there's some pre-application meetings that, in conversations that are happening with, interested property owners asking questions about what development standards are, what options might be. There's a lot you can do under the zoning districts out there. One of those projects was approved by council, the Turnstone subdivision that this commission reviewed as well. Where they are with receiving approval on their, infrastructure side of things. We'd have to defer to Brandon to find out exactly where they are in that process, but from what I understand, they had some storm drain issues
Yeah.
to design and
Yeah.
seek his approval before they could move dirt. Plus, it's been winter, so
yeah,
yeah.
it seemed like, I can't remember the time frame of when that came through, but it's been a
Last
little.
July.
Yeah, it was last July. Yeah,
Yeah,
at the commission level, and then went on to
Mhm.
city council, I think in August.
well, I could go on and on. There's other ones that I've seen activity out on the
Mhm.
north side of town, by the jail. That
Mhm.
seems like there's a lot of activity there that is in varying stages of, occupancy or,
Yeah, there's a final plat for the Boyers Meadows subdivision that's going to be going to city council pretty shortly to, plat
Mhm.
the remainder part of that. Across the street on Samuelson, you'll be getting a conditional use permit application before you, probably next month, for another several hundred unit apartment complex on Samuelson. So that's one we're having Darren Fluke assist us, get across the finish line, just kind of a bandwidth issue to manage all this stuff. So he's helping with that. So you can anticipate seeing that, probably in April.
You said that's on the south side of Boyer?
It's actually on the west side of Samuelson.
West side.
Yeah,
Directly across from the fairgrounds.
yeah,
Right, right.
okay, since we're in that area,
yeah.
what about the on the inside of, in the industrial area, the activity there?
The Project Bulldogs, it's called, has broken ground. So people may see along the southeast corner of Woodland and Great Northern, flurry of activity as it relates to trying to get that building up and running. Yeah, they received a building permit and they're just pursuing. They probably have a 6 to 7 or 8 months construction schedule. They move pretty quickly.
That's where they're infilling everything.
Mhm.
That's right.
An official applicant or,
It's an Amazon micro distribution center.
okay,
So
So everyone's asking me who's paying for the damage to the road. You've seen it on Facebook, I'm sure.
nope, not on there anymore.
Okay. Good idea.
No, the road's crumbling for sure.
Oh,
But
it's
they're
bad.
not using GM, they're coming up Schweitzer cutoff.
Yeah, no, that happens every few years on Great Northern Road. Do
Yeah, yeah.
you remember like 3 years ago, we repaved $270,000 to repave north of the railroad tracks for about a quarter mile?
Quarter mile.
Yeah.
You guys just put dry pack in the road and call it good.
No, that's gonna be the city's first road project this spring when the
Yeah, right.
conditions allow. Yeah,
That's gonna be
the
good.
subgrade on that road is horrible. And you may have heard that we had applied for a $23 million federal grant to redo the entire Great Northern Corridor railroad crossing elimination grant that was not awarded. So there's unfortunately not the Public Works Department is lacking the funds to do a full, rebuild of Great Northern Road like our multimodal plan envisioned. That's a multi-million-dollar project, multi-tens of $1 million
Or
project.
Boyer, right by Super One right there. All that dry patch put in.
Yeah, we're chipping away.
You guys want to be careful. You don't have an agendized development update. And so you want to be really careful not to wander into discussions that aren't on your agenda.
Thank
Okay, so we're getting shut down, it sounds like.
Well, one other question I just had is, that will we be getting into the height questions for downtown?
That I think is part and parcel with the overlay and historic preservation related work that council's asked us to look at. Just earlier today, we were taking a look at what the code actually says as it relates to building heights for various reasons. So absolutely, yeah, it's going to be part of the project, part of the.
One thing when you look at our downtown code, sorry, Fauna, the notice is agendized, but I kind of appreciate these casual back and forths as well. We're not talking about specific projects, but our building height downtown is 45 feet.
Yeah.
There are ways to get to 65 feet, and they include they involve including structured parking or including residential units on floors above 35 feet. But then once you go up above the maximum height of 45 feet, there are further restrictions that make it really hard to build anything taller than 45 feet in Sandpoint. And that relates to the step back requirement that upper floors above 45 feet need to be stepped back 10%, the greater of either the width or the length of the property itself. Now, downtown properties range from 100 feet to 150 feet to 200 feet in depth. So that requires, between a 15 and a 20-foot step back for upper floors, which unless you own half of a city block, it's actually quite hard to design a building that allows for top floors to have that large of a step back, because you're talking 20 feet from each property line.
But to go any further, we're going to have to put something like that on the agenda so we can actually talk about it, make it a meaningful dialogue with you. But yes, to answer your question, yes, it's 100% involved in the looking at a historic overlay district is going to be also one of the things we look at are building heights. So,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Any more discussion? Okay. With no further business before the commission, this meeting is now adjourned at 6:35.
Thanks, Mose.
Thank you.